I was really hyped for the new James Bond movie Spectre, since it marked the return of the Spectre crime syndicate, which was made famous in the Sean Connery-era Bond movies. Spectre and several original characters from the novels were off-limits to Eon Productions after a legal battle left many of the rights in the hands of the Kevin McClory estate in the 70s, so seeing these relics of pop culture revived in a modern setting made me really excited. In the Daniel Craig-era Bond movies, we have seen Bond explore as a character and see a more serious world with interesting characters and motivations. Mixing in these classic Bond elements and tropes and revamping them for the modern movies sounded fantastic. Right? It was okay. There are some really good moments in the film. I really like the gadget scene with Q. It has a lot of good humor and shows us Bond and Q's relationship. Bond's scenes with Moneypenny are also really good. The main Bond girl, Madeline Swan, is also pretty compelling. She has good scenes that show her character and even bring out some moments for Bond that I wish the movie expanded. The action scenes are exciting and go through amazing locations such as Rome and the Austrian Alps. The fights are good. Bond has a tough fight with a Spectre agent on a train, and a fight with a guy in a helicopter that is doing loops over a parade. I like the Aston Martin chase sequence. Rome at night is beautiful, and both the Aston Martin DB10 and the Jaguar CX-75 are sexy as hell. Even if it does have some clunky exposition, the conversation between Bond and Moneypenny during the chase is really funny. It brings some levity to the movie. While the movie did have some really good moments, it has a lot of problems. Notably how formulaic it is to the classic Bond movies, which was avoided in the previous Daniel Craig Bond films for the most part. Here it is blatant to the point you can easily guess what is going to happen, since James Bond movies and tropes have become so iconic in pop culture. Problems arise with how so many parts of the movie feel forced. The villains are forced, the relationships are forced, the romance is forced, the themes are forced, the classic James Bond winks and nods are forced. The classic Bond moments weren't carefully toned and subtle like in Casino Royale or Skyfall, where they added familiar flavor to a new recipe. In this movie, they are jammed down the audience's throat. The story structure and many scenes are so reminiscent of ones in previous films such as Thunderball and From Russia with Love that Spectre feels like a best-of collection of James Bond stuff rather than having its own identity. The movie drags especially in the third act. It seems to exist to cram in more recognizable Bond imagery and themes that don't quite gel with the rest of the Craig-era Bond films. I should mention at this point that I'm getting into spoiler territory. If you don't want any spoilers, skip to this time code. The opening credits are as cheesy and hypersexualized as the opening credits before the Daniel Craig era, and this time there are tentacles. There are even tentacles caressing a nude James Bond and some woman. It's impossible to not make tentacle porn jokes. Even though the tentacles are supposed to represent how Spectre is everywhere and has connections to everything, it looks silly in execution. And let's be honest, the Sam Smith song for the movie wasn't that good. Sorry. Let's talk about the Bond girls. This movie introduces 3 new ones. First we have, who is introduced in the opening sequence where she makes out with Bond in a hotel room before he leaves to chase a Spectre agent. She isn't seen again, so Bond could have just left her there for all we know. Next we have Lucia Chada, played by Monica Bellucci, who was the oldest actress to portray a Bond girl. A lot of early promotion touted her as this experienced femme fatale and possible game changer of the series that usually had Bond end up with younger women. She's in the movie for 5 minutes. Bond rescues her and sleeps with her, and then we never see her again. Finally, we have Dr. Madeline Swan, played by Léa Seydoux. She is the main Bond girl of the film and has a pretty significant role. But after she helps Bond escape from the Spectre based in Morocco, the movie doesn't have anything else for her to do. This contributes to the lack of momentum in the third act. Then the movie forces her and Bond to be in love, even though they have known each other for just a few days and had a lot of trust issues. So Bond rescues her, she rebuffs his advances, she rescues him, they have survived an assassination attempt, sex, she says I love you while he's being tortured, which comes out of left field. He rescues her again, he gives up his life as a 00 agent for her, and then they ride into the sunset in the Aston Martin DB5, presumably to get married. I can imagine him dating her, but to be the love of his life, not really, especially when losing Vesper Lynd in Casino Royale broke his heart so thoroughly. In fact, Vesper is name-dropped a few times to get a rise out of Bond, so he isn't over her. It doesn't seem like Madeline gave him closure to finally move on and be with her. James Bond himself isn't immune to problems. The level of incompetence Bond displays in the field is actually shocking. When he goes into a seemingly abandoned cabin, he sees a security camera and doesn't disable it. That comes back to bite him in the ass later. During the admittedly cool chase scene in the Alps where Bond chases after the villains who have kidnapped Madeline, he intentionally rams the front of his plane into the back of the van holding her. Bond could have easily gotten her killed with that maneuver. Then when the van finally crashes, the muscular SPECTRE agent Mr. Hicks is thrown through the windshield and slumps on the hood. While that could have killed a normal man, Bond knows that that isn't a normal man, and should have checked to see if he was really dead. It would have saved him some trouble later. And back to Lucia from earlier, she mentions to Bond that more assassins would be coming after her if he takes the time to sleep with her. Lucky for Bond, no assassins showed up while they were shagging. Talk about getting caught with your pants down. Then towards the end, Bond lets Madeline leave for somewhere before he and his MI6 pals go to confront the sub-villain after destroying the SPECTRE base and assuming the main villain died in the explosion. Apparently Bond didn't think that any more SPECTRE agents would come after them. Of course the main villain isn't dead and it captures Madeline, so Bond has to save her. These are amateur mistakes. The biggest problem with SPECTRE is SPECTRE itself. It seems that after recovering the rights to use the SPECTRE crime syndicate and characters again, the filmmakers decided to make sure you knew it was SPECTRE at every turn, even when it made moments clunky and forced. A particular example is the reveal that the main villain is in fact Ernest Stavro Blofeld, the recurring main antagonist and head of SPECTRE from the Sean Connery-era Bond films. Throughout the first 2 acts of the film, his character is referred to as Franz Oberhauser. It isn't until the end of the 2nd act that he just says that he calls himself Ernest Stavro Blofeld to Bond and Madeline. It is solely for fan service since this moment has no impact on the in-universe characters. They have no reason to care that his name is Blofeld since there is no reference to that name before that point in the entire movie. That zaps all meaning and importance in that moment. It is very similar to the scene in Star Trek Into Darkness where Khan reveals his name to Kirk and Spock. They have never heard that name before, so why would they care? It's just for the audience. Also, Blofeld reveals that he lets his white cat wander around the torture chamber in this scene, just cuz. The recurring SPECTRE assassin in the movie, Mr. Hicks, invokes iconic Bond henchmen such as Jaws and Oddjob. He is mostly silent like Oddjob and has a silly gimmick like Jaws. If you thought Metal Teeth was silly/cool, look out, this guy has metal fingernails on his thumbs. Make of that what you will. Now, is that meant to be funny? Because that kind of Bond villain gimmick is inherently funny. He just shows up, says nothing, and murders a guy with his gimmick thumbs because he wanted his assignment. By the way, that's the only guy he kills in the entire movie. Other than that, he shows up for some car chases and then a fight with Bond on a train. This adds to the tonal problems throughout the movie where it seems split between trying to invoke the campier Bond movie tropes from the 60s and 70s and the gritty modern setting. The worst part of the movie is Blofeld. This character is so badly written it exists just to insert Blofeld into the Daniel Craig timeline and retroactively link him to the villains of the last 3 movies. Well, that works for the most part since it is implied that a larger criminal organization was behind the scenes and no one gave 2 scoops about Quantum anyway. It is a bit of a stretch to say Raul Silva was a SPECTRE agent, though SPECTRE could have just hired him since he had nothing to lose and had a vendetta against MI6. However, since Blofeld's characterization and motivations are so weak, By retconning Spectre and this Blofeld as being linked to the deaths of Vesper Lynd and M, those key moments lose impact by being the result of Blofeld's petty vengeance. Blofeld has a motivation, but it's so weak. So here's why he hates Bond. Blofeld's dad took Bond in after he lost his parents and treated him like a real son, which made Blofeld jealous. Blofeld then kills his dad and fakes his own death. Did you get that? He killed his dad, became the leader of a global crime syndicate somehow, and decided to have a lifelong vendetta against Bond that leads to the death of two key people in his life because his dad treated the foster son who lost his parents with affection. That's not complex. That's pathetic. He comes off as an insane spoiled brat, but the movie doesn't treat him like a crazy person. It is really hard to take someone this petty so seriously. Blofeld's connections to Bond and Madeline are so contrived. Apparently Madeline and Blofeld knew each other as kids, but she forgot. Don't worry if you forgot that too, because the movie does. There's a scene where Madeline falls asleep after having too much wine and says she can see two Bonds. While it seemed like clever foreshadowing of Bond being connected to Blofeld, it doesn't work since they aren't blood relatives and have next to nothing paralleling them except for contrived coincidences. I believe that Blofeld was put into the movie and connected to the villains of the previous movies because he is famous to the audience. The personal connection to Bond is an attempt to make the character more than just a copy of the archetype. But that doesn't work when you make the villain's motivation so petty and shove in all the elements of an archetype that has been referenced and lampooned so many times in pop culture that you can't take an earnest remake of it seriously anymore. For goodness sake, they even give the new Blofeld the same facial scar as the original. During the conflict between M and C, the sub-villain, M mentions that what makes a 00 agent important is that their license to kill also gives them a license not to kill, allowing them to make a judgment call. That falls flat when Bond has killed countless people in cold blood throughout the previous movies and this movie. Then at the end of the movie, after Bond shoots down Blofeld's helicopter from hundreds of meters away at night with a handgun from a moving boat, Bond walks up to an injured Blofeld on a bridge. At one end, you have M, representing Bond's life of espionage and murder. At the other end, you have Dr. Madeline Swan, representing a chance for a new life. The police are there with M, and Blofeld is too injured to walk. That kinda removes the tension. If Bond did kill Blofeld, it would have only been for revenge, and killing an injured, unarmed man while allies are right there to apprehend him would have made Bond look too cold-blooded. Bond does have a license to kill and not to kill. It's just really easy to choose not to kill in this instance. Daniel Craig even said once that they couldn't make a new Bond movie like the classic Bond movies because Austin Powers and others have lampooned them so much. Yet they did just that with Spectre. Overall, the movie is a fun action romp, but it isn't too thoughtful since the depths it explores amount to shallow resolutions and characterizations. I'd give this one 6 out of 10. If you want an action movie with some familiar elements, it's fine. If you want a Bond movie like Casino Royale or Skyfall, you're gonna be disappointed. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you subscribe to my channel and like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter for updates on new videos. I'll see you all next time.